Okay, this week's Sky Cricket podcast is being recorded on what should have been the last day of the Test series between England and West Indies. But as is the way of things with Bazball, they tend to get these things done and dusted pretty quickly. So I'm at home, Nas, as ever, in front of his bookshelf in Chelmsford. Um, you rearrange them dutifully for every podcast, don't you, to make it look as though you're more intelligent than you really are and better read than you really are. Um, you were on 100 duty during the Test match. It looks as though it's been a bit of an underwhelming start to that comp on the men's side of the tournament.
I think underwhelming's the right word. I think we needed yesterday, definitely. The competition needed yesterday, needed a close game. That was a relatively close one at Lords that I was doing, Birmingham Phoenix against the Spirit, but it needed a really good close game. The men's comp, that is, and we got that last night. Trent Rockets up at the Manchester Originals. The women's game, as ever, has been excellent. There have been close games. The standard has been excellent. And the standard of overseas has been superb. Some of the names that have come across and will now come across with the Asia Cup finishing off a couple of days ago with a magnificent win for Sri Lanka women. So the women's comp has been superb again. Men's comp, I think you sum it up pretty well with underwhelming. Hopefully that will improve with England players joining now and MLC finishing. What about the Test match? Another couple of days off for you? I mean, when Sky said, do you want Test match duty or 100 duty? You read it well. I mean, there's not much difference between them with the way that it's been played.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. It was a stunning end, and we'll come on to that. But it was the Blue for Bob Test match as well, of course, which you know well. You've been involved in a couple of those, and terrific just to remember our late friend. There was a good turnout. They raised a lot of money for a good cause. I think about 250,000 on that day. We had a nice dinner the night before, where a couple of old mates turned up. Bumble was there. Towser, Andy Lloyd, former Warwickshire captain, who was a great mate of Bob's, and who, of course, career was ended by that Malcolm Marshall bouncer in the 1984 series. He was there. Bob's family were there. So it was a very nice day. It's always brilliantly put on. And some of it sounds like a bit in-house, but I have to say some of um, the videos that we put out, there was one particularly good one, I thought, between Stuart Broad and James Anderson, where they went down to a bench in where Bob lived near Putney, and shared a glass of wine. Actually, it came on the back of a conversation I had a couple of winters ago. I bumped into both Stuart and Jimmy at the end of the New Zealand series, which was 2 winters ago now. And we were in the airport lounge waiting to fly home. They were having a glass of wine, and they were talking about Bob and how they'd like to go and open a bottle of red or share a glass of red on a bench in that area in Barnes. So I said, well, that'd be a great idea. Why don't we film it? And in the end, it managed to find the day, and it was really nicely done by Stuart and beautifully put together by the lads in edit. So I thought that was a highlight for me of the coverage.
Absolutely. It was a brilliant. I watched it again this morning, actually. It was a brilliant bit of VT. Really emotional. It's
It
been
reflects a
emotional.
little bit on the links, doesn't it? I mean, I suppose the relationships between former players and broadcasters and the current players come and go a little bit, depending on how the team are doing. If the team are doing badly, criticism comes. There's no way around it, and that can strain relationships for a while. If things are going okay, as they are at the moment, things are a little better. But they were talking about how they had misread Bob because of his, performances on the verdict from time to time when he would get the chainsaw out and really rip into people, and how nice it was when they got to know him that they realized he was a warmer, gentler guy than perhaps they'd imagined, but also just how things don't change really. I mean, things do change obviously, but the same stresses and strains that players of every generation go through, they don't change.
No, but that's what I like about Blue for Bob Week, really, is that you remember the funnies and you remember the bloke. And Benedict has on his laptop all those moments and all his, all his great quotes from the verdict. And then the cricketer as well. On that bit of footage, you saw Bob running down the hill at Headingley and bowling Australia out. You see, Wardy in the dressing room and Joe Root doing his Bob impersonation and Bob reacting to that. It's the stories behind the scenes that we sit there in the green room. I mean, there was that time I left Bob behind, wasn't there? I can't remember which test it was, Leeds or Manchester.
And it's absolutely unrepeatable what he called you, I have to say.
Absolutely. We would never do another podcast or be on telly again if we say what Bob called me that morning. But that's what I like about weeks like that. It is about a good cause, a great cause, and raising money, but it's remembering a great cricketer and a good friend as well. And what about the test match? What did you make of the cricket?
I was going to say he would have loved the end to that test match because, of course, just not quite the end because that was Ben Stokes, but the bit before that, just after lunch, when Mark Wood bowled that spell, 6 overs, 5 for 9. Bob would have loved that. Great fast bowler, running in. Crowd, you know what it's like at Edgbaston. You remember it well when they were roaring your...
You got to be a good player to score runs there. Yeah, definitely.
So they roared Mark Wood on, and it actually started curiously with a 6 that Mikhail Louis hit. He planted Shoaib Bashir for 6. Played well, actually, maiden test half century. Unbeknownst to him, it landed on the concourse and roughed up one side, and for once England were not for changing the ball, and suddenly it started to reverse like crazy, and at 90 miles an hour plus, when the ball is swinging late, that is very difficult to contend with.
And how do you assess the victory and what lies ahead? We've both said that this series is about winning what's in front of you, which you've always got to do at cricket, especially when they did stand bottom of the table. They've moved up that now quite a bit, but bottom of those World Test Championship rankings, but also looking to the future and winning away from home. We did the stats on sides struggling to win away from home and winning in Australia. So it wasn't for me winning. I think with any England side that they could have picked, if they'd stuck with Anderson, Broad, whatever, Ollie Robinson, I think they'd have beaten West Indies. But it was the style and manner, watching Wood reverse swing it at 90 mile an hour, watching Atkinson bowl, watching Bashir bowl at Trent Bridge, watching Jamie Smith bat and keep. It was the sort of manner and the style that was almost more important for once. I'm very much for winning. Yeah. But for me, the way they won and the style and type of win. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had to do both. They hadn't won a series since Pakistan in the December 2 winters ago. They'd drawn in New Zealand after that. Then they didn't beat Australia, although a great series in the Ashes, and then lost to India. So winning is important. I mean, it's a habit, and you get used to it. And supporters want to see England win. Let's be honest about it. But also, I think half an eye on the future. Ian Chappell's written a piece on Cricinfo today talking about how, they have to have half an eye on what's coming. And you sense just in the bowling attack in particular, the way that Atkinson and Wood combine, Bashir's choice over Leach, you sense that they've got half an eye on that. So I thought, Atkinson was the player of the series, 22 wickets. He didn't quite pass Alec Bedsu. That was the record for a debutant in a 3-match series, or record in a 3-match series for England. But he did I thought he looked like he had the goods for, you always have to look at West Indies and say they weren't the strongest West Indies team and put that in context. But if you look at what Atkinson provided, pace, reverse swing, certainly on that last day, an ability to hustle and ruffle batsmen, ability to seam it in English conditions as he did at Lords. You're looking at somebody who seems to have pretty much the complete package there that you hope then will stand him in good stead against stronger opposition.
Yeah, and the two things he needs to add to that is staying fit, obviously, as a fast bowler. He looks like he has an action that is, repeatable, and hopefully that will look after his body and he'll look after his body. But I also quite like his character. I like the way, and I don't know the lad particularly well, and we interview him occasionally, but he seems quite calm. Even when he's taking a wicket, he's not overreacting, or if he's bowled a bad ball, he's not overreacting. I saw him take a wicket, and it was just that look in his eye, almost like the West Indians used to have with us. There wasn't any sledging or whatever. Ambrose, Walsh. I quite like his character of, this is what I do. I bowl fast and I get wickets. And even if I'm doing it for England in front of a full house, I'm not going to overreact, and basically this is what I do. So what about the chat?
He's not a man of many words, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, or emotions, which I quite like. Yeah.
No, next time you do the presentation, you need a few questions up your sleeve because he gives you short answers.
But I quite like the way he takes emotion out of it, which is important in international sport as well. What about the fact some would argue they didn't blood, other young players, and they stuck with Wokes, and wouldn't Wokes again? Was that a missed opportunity? At the start of the test, if you went on social media, it was like, we've left out Anderson, and Anderson's retired. We missed an opportunity here to look at Pennington or others. What do you think to that?
Well, Wokes got better in the series, and he is a different role from Anderson. I don't think they're exactly like for like, are they? Because when you're looking to pick a team, you're looking to balance a team, and Wokes bats at 8 and offers a vital contribution. He got 60 odd in that first innings at Edgbaston when England were actually up against it a little bit. So it's not a direct comparison. Most people thought Mark Wood might have been rested because of the nature of back-to-back tests and his fragility, and the need to wrap him in cotton wool and all that. But I'm very glad that they didn't, because what he gave us in that game was just thrilling cricket. And I think for supporters who are paying their money to come and watch, they will have gone away from that day watching Wood just after lunch, and then watching Stokes go past Beefy's record and carve the fastest 50 for an England player. Although it was only a half a day's play, they will have gone away thinking, yeah, we came, we had a good day and got value for money.
And Wokes, where are you with Chris Wokes? Because he is a superb cricketer in England. That he's not done anything in the last 3 games that we're thinking, that wow, because we just know Chris Wokes, he was player of the series in the Ashes, away from home and in Australia. His record isn't great. So what should they do with Wokes? Do you see Wokes as a definite starter in Australia?
No, I don't see him as a definite starter at all. I think he's a pick for right now, because obviously they have to try and balance what you were talking about at the start, which is both winning and creating something for down the line. They've got to win now, and he's there at number 8, and obviously an excellent bowler in English conditions. But I think that may well be a very different scenario when they get to Australia or Pakistan this winter, for the obvious reasons that you stated, that his record is far superior at home than abroad. So certainly wouldn't write a player of his quality off, but I also don't think it's a given that he will play a Test cricket abroad. I mean, he himself seemed to almost a year or 18 months ago kind of seemed to suggest that he thought that was the case. But players get a second wind, don't they? That things change. In the absence of Anderson, they may feel that they need a steadier type, and they may feel that there's nobody better at number 8 to balance, to link the bowlers and the batters. So all that's ahead of us.
He himself stated, before this series, that he could learn from Anderson and Broad, and how at this age, his age, they improved and learned and were always learning new tricks. And he sort of intimated that he was at a phase now that he wants to learn how to be a better bowler away from home and learn new tricks. So, and I think you're right. It's something I've thought about. If you look at previous Ashes tours, we talk about the batting and the bowling, but also the way our tail enders just get completely blown away by Mitchell Johnson or Mitchell Starc or whoever come in, just bomb them with bouncer after bouncer. And Stokes and McCullum may not worry about it, but that number 8 position, you need someone who bats. Otherwise, you're going straight from possibly Jamie Smith to 4 bowlers. So I think that's something they need to keep an eye on for the future.
Just 2 more things to touch on, I think. One was the, I suppose, slight refinement of Bazball, a slightly more measured approach. England was scoring quickly, 400 at Trent Bridge and rattling along at Edgbaston, but it didn't seem to me to be slightly the manic kind of approach that they'd had previously. And I think Stokes and McCullum referenced that. Both of them, McCullum talked about a slightly more mature approach. Stokes talked about it being less one-dimensional. So I think that was obviously that was obviously something to come out of the series. And then the second bit was just the one negative from that final day was the fractured finger to Zach Crawley. But 3 weeks before the Sri Lanka series, will he be fit? Where will England look? If he's not, it's the one area, I suppose, the opening batters area where they're not actually blessed with obvious alternatives. There are many alternatives, of course, but it's not obvious where England will turn.
No, it's one subject I'm an expert on this pod is broken digits. So if it's
he went
just
off with fewer histrionics than you did, I have to say.
3 weeks it should be okay if it's not a displaced fracture. If it's a displaced fracture, that may be a bit longer because then the doctors start to worry and the physio starts to worry. If you take a blow on that, then you could be out for a long period. If it's just a hairline fracture, 3 weeks, Crawley's a bit tougher than Hussain as well. He may, don't give a sucker an even chance. Don't let anyone in your position. So he'll probably want to. The options, who I've liked recently and last few years, Keaton Jennings. I like. He's not a blocker. He puts bat to ball. I know when he first played, he looked a bit robotic, a bit mechanical, bowling machine driven, and likes of Philander and whatever targeted that pad and just outside off stump. But he's been prolific actually playing for Lancashire, and he's got a lot of runs when Stokes has played against him. Yeah. I've seen a few games where Stokes has been in the opposition.
The management of the type that when they've moved on from a player, they've moved on. No. I'm thinking of Alex Lees, actually, who was there at the start of Bazball, was one of the earlier players to kind of be moved on. Do you think a player like that can come again?
No, I'm not sure about this management. They're pretty... And what I like about this management, and I tell you what makes them a successful side, is their stubbornness. I really like the fact that there's a real craving out there for Ben Folkes. We know everyone loves Ben Folkes' keeping. Sorry, we've seen this other lad and the way he bats. We're moving on from that. You know what? Jimmy Anderson is the greatest bowler we have ever had, and we could go down the emotions of letting Jimmy play at Old Trafford and letting him play all summer. Nope, sorry. We're going to move on from that. Crawley, we're going to back him if he keeps nicking off stuff. I love we're not listening to the paper chat. We're not listening to the Hussain Atherton podcast. We are this is what we believe, and we're going to stick with that. That is their best attribute. Do not do things because other people say you should. Just have your gut feel. So I think I'd be surprised if they went back. They may, Dan Lawrence is the next batter, but opening the batting is a position that, although they moved Duckett up to open, I know he'd done a bit with Knotts and he's done pretty well. So I don't know. You'd hope Crawley would be fit because he's the best person to do it.
Well, you said they don't listen to the podcast, but secretly we reckon they do. Everybody does. And it's time now to move away from the test match and turn our attentions to the 100 and the women's game. Well, I'm delighted to say that this week's guest is Sophia Dunkley. Many reasons for getting Sophia on. She's in good form, good start to the 100, back in the England fold, but most importantly, is the biggest fan of this podcast. We had Kate Cross up with us, Sophia, at Trent Bridge, and she said that you're the one, amongst the women's team, you're the one who listens. You download the podcast on a weekly basis. Explain yourself.
She's not wrong, to be fair. I'm definitely an avid listener. I think, to be honest, I'm a secret badger, to be honest. I just love hearing the conversation, just love hearing the chats. But I'm not going to lie, there's a few in the England team. We've got Heather definitely tunes in every now and then. Danny Wyatt definitely is a listener. Tash Farrett's a big fan. So, they're not doing too bad.
That's fantastic. We kind of take the mickey out of ourselves that we have so few listeners. We have one in the British Virgin Islands, but it's good to know that there's a few in the women's team as well. You mentioned Danny Wyatt there. I've got to ask you about the hen do. When was it? About a week ago, was it, in Leeds? You've all
Yeah,
recovered.
we literally finished the New Zealand series at Lords on the 17th, and then we had a small window in between the end of the series and the 100. So everyone shut up to Leeds for a night, which is great. As Danny, she had 2 requests: one that it was in Leeds, and one that we dressed as cowgirls. And then the rest is kind of down to me and the other bridesmaids. So yeah, take from that what you will.
The rest is a haze and eminently forgotten, no doubt. I'm about to. My daughter wants to go up to Leeds University in September, and I've kind of been wandering around Leeds on Saturday nights during various test matches, thinking, "Oh my God!"
I know, it's pretty crazy up there. Great fun though. Recommend.
So you've had a terrific start to the 100. It's been an up and down period for you, really. You had an iffy winter with the national team, left out of the Pakistan series, but back in the setup against New Zealand, and a good start with the Welsh Fire in the 100. How I mean, coping with failure and the ups and downs of a sporting life is something we all have to go through. What are the learnings you've taken from it, and how have you managed to cope with these inevitable hurdles that everybody has to kind of cope with?
Yeah, it's definitely been a tricky, I'd say 9 months to be honest. Even about a year really, because we had the Ashes last year, and I really underperformed in that, and it was really tough. I think it was the first time that I felt the women's game was under a massive spotlight, and I felt like the whole world was watching. And since I played for England, I hadn't really felt that really. So it was pretty hard going. But I've made a kind of big technical change just after the Ashes series, and it's taken a while for it to, I guess, bed in and to feel normal and kind of sync with all the other kind of bits of my body and my stance and stuff. So yeah, it's now I'm kind of starting to see the rewards of it. I don't want to speak too soon because cricket's a cruel game and it gets you all the time, but starting to kind of see it come through now, which is really pleasing, because there are times when you go through these things and you think there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but yeah, it's nice to kind of start to see those rewards at the minute.
Sophia, before we get on to the technical side, what about the mental side? You described yourself as a cricket badger. Are you also a worrier? Are you someone that gets down on yourself? Every time I see you, you've got a smile on your face. So when you were going through those quiet periods, those difficult times, was it all encompassing? And also, I mean, Michael's often spoken about having something outside the game, something to take your focus away from just cricket. Do you have that as well?
Yeah, it was definitely took a toll mentally. And I think, definitely after the Ashes, we go straight into the 100 again, and it was pretty tough to come back in, because I knew that I was under a lot of eyes, and I didn't feel like I was performing the best that I could. So that was pretty tough. And yeah, it took a while to kind of get out of that space. But I've definitely worked a lot on the mental side of the game for sure. One in the kind of aspect of how I kind of deal with failure, how I want to play cricket, and how I kind of shake things off a bit quicker. And to mainly kind of my approach, especially in T20 cricket, I was kind of a batter that people expected me to go in, get the team off to a flying start. And I kind of, irrespective of conditions, I kind of wanted to bat in the same way. And I've kind of obviously learned now that that's not the best way to go about it. I've got to really take into account my conditions, my opponents, and play a lot smarter. But obviously I have the ability to be really aggressive at the top of the order, but I've kind of changed the way that I go about that now a little bit.
And apart from Hindus, what takes your mind off the game of cricket so that you can put cricket in a bit of perspective?
Yeah, well, I've got an amazing support network around me. Like my mum's been with my whole cricketing journey, from taking me to Middlesex under 11s and all the way through driving around the country, and she's really good at giving me perspective, which is great. So when I go home, go take the dogs for a walk and just get away and spend time with family, and got a great group of friends as well, which is really nice for me to have that social group. And it's good that when they don't really know much about cricket, they're not really worried about whether I've got runs or anything there. They're just proud of whatever I do, which is really nice. So I say on the social side, and they've also got a new camera as well, actually. So I'm enjoying taking a few pictures when I'm out and about, which has been great.
And those technical changes, it's something to do with your back leg, isn't it? You felt your back leg was collapsing. You weren't staying tall enough at the crease. You weren't maybe targeting opening up that offside because of it. Just explain those technical changes.
Yeah, so that was one of the things. It kind of started in October last year, and I first kind of changed a little bit to my grip. So obviously I've got a bit of a split grip, which is quite evident. But I don't think that will probably ever change because that's just kind of naturally how I play cricket. But I was lucky enough to go to India with England for a batting camp, and I worked with Abhishek Nair from KKR, and he was really good at helping me change my grip and my swap hand. So there's been a slight technical change there. He could have drew like lines down the back of my bat and on my like left glove. So if you ever watch me bat in the 100 or anything, you might see me kind of line up my hand and look at it before I look. And I don't think I need the lines anymore, but it's kind of become a little bit of a habit. So that basically kind of started off the change. But I think that had a knock-on effect to the rest of my kind of body really when I played. So a change in my grip meant my hands went a little bit towards like third slip. So my alignment was a little bit off, and that. So I had to kind of rectify that a little bit. And then, like you said, my back leg. So when I kind of tried to hit the ball quite hard, I could kind of collapse a little bit and I lost a little power. So I'm trying to keep that a little bit stronger, just to kind of make the most of the power that I've got, I guess. And it's nice to see that kind of starting to come through in some of the games that I've played.
Something I've wanted to ask actually, because players move from franchise to franchise now, and then you're with national teams and various other domestic teams, and therefore different voices must come your way from a coaching and help perspective. How do you kind of marry all those different voices together and the different bits of advice and coaching you'll get, and work out really what works for you, and not getting confused, I suppose, is the danger if there are too many voices and too many changes all at once?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think definitely last winter something I did struggle with a little bit, because I was making a few changes and I wasn't really quite sure where I sat with it all, and it was just a little bit different. But I think now we've got Alex Gidman, who's our batting coach at England, and I work really, really well with him. He's been amazing so far and a great support over the last few weeks. And I think I kind of use him as my first port of call, really. And even when he's away or we're not together, I kind of send him a few videos of what I'm doing and just like to kind of check back in on him. And I feel in a much better place myself, kind of knowing what I need to do and what my kind of technique looks like at the minute. So I think I kind of had to go through a patch of not really being sure and not understanding to now feeling quite assured in myself. So if I do go abroad or play in other franchise teams, I kind of filter out what I need to and kind of stay strong to what I believe is right for me, I guess.
There seems to be fewer problems in the women's side of the 100 in terms of players coming and going. I mean, it's been a fairly underwhelming start in the men's comp. You've played a couple of games. I think you're 1-1, lost one, haven't you, at the moment? And you've been in good form yourself, but there seems to be less of a squeeze on player availability in the women's 100. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of teams have got because of the Asia Cup going on, different overseas for the first 3 games and a few teams. But yeah, pretty consistent across the whole thing. Yeah.
One of those, you mentioned the Asia Cup there. That was some story, wasn't it? Chamari Atapattu and that Sri Lankan side. I know they beat you in T20s at the end of last year, but they look like a country, a side that are going in the right direction, and luckily not in your group in the World T20.
I know, definitely. I think it's just so exciting with the women's game at the moment that you see so many teams kind of beating each other, and the competition is just, going through the roof at the minute. And Chamari is just an outstanding player. She has been for years, and she's always someone when she comes out to bat, you're thinking, oh no, what's going to happen today? So yeah, it's just great seeing them doing well, and just to see the kind of the gap between all teams kind of getting closer and closer, which is exciting.
And the Aussies, sorry, I feel the number of Aussies that have come over, the likes of Meg Lanning, you have Jess Jonathan, Beth Mooney, it's an incredible talent pool that has come over in there's someone just walked in the back of your room there. This is a podcast, get out of the room.
The umpire is really at Sophia Gardens. I'm not really sure what it's being used for right now.
But as Ath says there, the quality of overseas in the comp with all those Australians over, it looks like if you're getting runs and wickets and playing well in this comp, it should stand you in good stead for what lies ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really brilliant to have the Aussies over here, and it really adds to kind of the caliber of the tournament and the quality that we've got on the pitch. And I think honestly, every team that you look at could beat each other. There's no kind of easy game or anything. It's really made the competition a lot more even, which is great because we've had a few exciting games already, and I think it's just going to continue through. And I really couldn't call who's going to be in that top 3 at the end of the comp, which I think is a good, great space to be in, really.
So your hopes for the tournament, and then just beyond, pushing it beyond, what are your personal hopes for the rest of the year?
I think definitely with the rain-affected game last year, it was a really heartbreaking way to kind of end the competition. I think coming into the Welsh Fire last year, obviously, it hadn't had kind of the best reputation of a team and their success. So it was really, I think, special for the girls to kind of make it through to that semi-final stage because they kind of felt like they'd proved a lot of people wrong and they'd taken it in a new direction. But I think, we just really kind of got that grit in our teeth to take it one step further. And it's a gutting way to end the competition, but I suppose it's only more motivation. And I think it's nice to, on a personal note, to start the competition well and hopefully try and finally feeling a little bit of fluency in my batting and hopefully continue that going forward.
And where do you think England are, the national team? You look at Alice Capsey, another one that's been through a lean patch. She's had a fabulous couple of months now. She looks back in nick with that World T20 in Bangladesh, with the abundance of spin that's going to be on show, playing of spin, bowling of spin. Where do you think you are as a team going into that tournament?
Yeah, I think the New Zealand series was a really good series for us. And I think as a team, naturally, we're quite aggressive and we kind of take the front foot option, I guess. But I think we've kind of got smarter in that as well. And we know that they're going into Bangladesh. It's going to be a question of adapting quickly and playing the conditions right in front of us and not necessarily being the most aggressive team, but probably the smartest. So I think, we're just trying to tie those two things together. And it's good to see Capsey doing so well in the competition and a few of the other England girls as well. And bodes really well for us going into that because this is kind of, we've not really got an England series together before the World Cup now. So, it's great to see everyone doing so well. And, I think really positive signs from the summer, which is
good. Final question, if I may, before we let you go. You seem very upbeat and chipper at the moment. Form is good. I wondered, how do you get, we talked a little bit about the times not going so well. Are you somebody who finds that cricket then bleeds in to your moods for the rest of your life? I speak as somebody myself who was pretty kind of even, but Nas, my comrade here, was an eternal worrier and would wander around like there was a dark cloud above his head. I just wondered how you managed to kind of to cope with all that.
Yeah, I think definitely it year ago was definitely taking over really, and it definitely kind of dampened my mood and it took over more than I would have liked. So that's definitely something that over the last year or so I've really worked on the mental side of the game, and I've kind of come into this summer with just kind of trying to take one day at a time and enjoy each day and take one game at a time. And I think when I used to look a little bit too far ahead at what was coming up, it really, it used to stress me out and worry me, and probably not at the forefront of my mind, but subconsciously. So I think now I'm definitely feeling in a much better place, kind of a bit more level, just trying to enjoy every game. And it's the first time probably in 9 months I've really started to enjoy my cricket again. I think when I got to play in the New Zealand series for England and I got to play at the Oval and open the batting with Danny, it was, instead of kind of thinking, oh God, like what's going to happen in the game, so I was like, oh, brilliant, this is great. I'm playing for England. I'm going out to open the batting with my best mate at the Oval, and let's just enjoy it because we've worked hard to get here. So I think that's something that's really working for me at the minute, and hopefully something I can continue even when the times are tough, and just, take one day at a time and enjoy it.
I think that's great advice. If there was one thing I wish I could have done better throughout a career, was kind of just staying in the moment, which is so hard to do. I think as a cricketer, you are conditioned to think about what's gone, all the bad dismissals, bad moments. You kind of, your mind wanders really to what's gone, and it also wanders to what's coming. Everybody's worried about contracts and careers and what might happen in the future, and you forget sometimes to really stay in the moment. And I actually think that's one of the things that the leadership of the men's team has been very good at in the test match team. Brendan McCullum, and particularly, he always talks about trying to stay in the moment. And I think that for a young cricketer, that is so important, and I think it makes the game much easier because, as you said, Sophia, right at the start of your chat there, you said it's a game that can get you. It can be quite a brutal and cruel game, and the more that you can just stay in the moment and enjoy it, the better. Anyway, thanks for joining us. It's been fantastic to have you on. Good luck for the rest of the tournament with the Welsh Fire and in the 100 and beyond, of course. And spread the word about the podcast.
Keep listening. Keep listening.
Don't worry. I'm all for it. Keep the content coming.
Well, it was good to hear from Sophia Nass, and good to kind of be reminded, really, when you move away from the playing arena, as we have done now for quite some time, it's always important to remember the trials and tribulations that players go through, and that you can kind of retain some empathy for the difficulties of the game. It's a good decade or more on since we played now, but that doesn't change, does it?
I think you've done your maths wrong there, mate. It's a good couple of it's a good couple of decades on from when we played, to be honest, if not more in your case. So, yeah, look, listen, it's that scramble brain when you're out of nick, that putting the game in context. That's what I liked about you. And you'd rock up to a test match with a racing post under your arm and a fishing rod at the end to go off and go fishing with Bumble or whatever, to try and get yourself away from the game. And I know I was talking about Bazball and Stokes and McCullum about their stubbornness. The other thing I like, and you touched on it there, about this regime, is how they try and give you some kind of balance to the game. It is important. When they first came in, it was almost like try and remember and remind yourself. And I think Joe Root does this seriously well. Try and remind yourself why you first started the game. You played it for the love of the game, for enjoying the game. And the moment it doesn't become enjoyable and you're not enjoying it, that's the time you should be concerned. So, and I was the worst. I was the worst at it, Athers. I made the game far too important. I used to wake up in the morning looking my alarm clock, hoping it wouldn't ring, so I'd have to get my gear on and go and play the game of cricket. Others, like Kevin Peterson, Darren Gough, Graham Gooch, Alex Stewart, a few of them used to absolutely love it and thrive being centre stage. So it's those mind games you play that you have to constantly play, where you try and remind yourself that it's not that important, but actually, it is really, really important.
And people will do it in different ways. Everybody will have their own way of coping and dealing with failure, but you have to find a way. I haven't met a sports person, an athlete yet, who does not at some stage in their career have to cope with failure or the down times or the difficulties or the low scores, the run of low scores, being dropped, getting beaten time and again. You have to find a way. Sport is about failure as much as success. That is just a brutal reality of it, and you have to find a way to deal with it.
And not just our sport. In our sport, you get another hit the next day. I mean, the Olympian, the swimmer, 0.02 of a second or so. Yeah. I was thinking that yesterday, I was thinking he'll think about that from gold to silver, that fraction of a second. Could I just put in another stroke somewhere? Or, you think about that for the rest of your life. But you're right, I guess in life as well, without getting too deep on our podcast, is not just sports people, but you have to learn to cope with failure and difficulties.
What would be your discipline, by the way, in the Olympics if you were going for?
Not swimming. No way. No, what would be the worst one? I saw a nice tweet the other day. If there's one sport in the Olympics I would not like to be good at,
triathlon.
I saw the Daley Thompson doco the other day. Actually, that's very good. Have you watched that? That's
no,
really good.
I'm planning to watch that. There looked a man who seemed, at least from the outside, to be completely chilled.
Yeah, and completely knew his own ability and just wanted to show everyone how good he was, really. And that's the sort of place you want to try and get yourself mentally.
Okay, so you did, how many 100 games have you done? You've done 3, have you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
So while we were at the test match,
6,
you were
3 days.
Yeah, 6 games, 3 days. And we kind of focused in with Sophia on the women's side of it. We mentioned that it'd been an underwhelming start. It picked up last night in Manchester, so this is being recorded on Tuesday. The night game in Manchester was a pretty good one last night, but up until that point, the games hadn't been that close. It's been a bit of a recurring theme over the tournament. I mean, do you think that's just unlucky? It's just how it's gone, or is there something in the shorter format that doesn't give teams a chance to get back into a game and that leads to more one-sided games, or not?
Oh, I think the season before last, that was definitely the case. And I think they panicked early. I remember speaking to Moeen Ali on the outfield at Edgbaston, and he said, we lost a couple of wickets and we thought we just got to have to keep going hard. Just in a 20-over game, there is still time, unless you're playing in the IPL and you have the super sub rule and you can just play all your batters and go hard, as Dinesh Karthik said. There is time in a T20 in England to just sit in and soak it up for a few balls. He felt in the 100 that sides hadn't realised that. Then last year there were some close games. And this season it's a slightly different reason. That, again, speaking to Moeen Ali and some of the bowlers, they reckon the ball that they are using this year in the 100 has a lot of lacquer on and is staying hard and zipping through for longer. And the 100 this year has some
hence the lower scores, you mean?
Lower scores. And instead of just sitting in and thinking it'll get easier, they feel it's not getting easier, so they're just going hard and being bowled out very cheaply. And one thing the 100 has at the start of this tournament are some high-quality seam swing bowlers. Like Amir played that first game. Birmingham Phoenix have 3 overseas bowlers in Abbott, Milne and Southey, and it is zipping around and sides aren't reacting accordingly. So I do think there has to be a bit of like, hold on, it's doing a bit. As in the World T20 in New York, just if we get 140, we'll probably win this game. We shouldn't be aiming for 180, 190 in the 100. If you get 140 early on in the first week, I think sides would have won, but they've gone too hard, too early, and have sort of crumbled in a heap.
You mentioned Mohammed Amir there, who played one game and then has gone off to, has he gone to Canada for the global T20?
He played Friday Blast,
yeah,
Tuesday 100, Thursday Canada.
Now, I think this is a big issue for the game, not specifically the 100 or this month, but it is an issue for the game, isn't it? We seem to be in the gig economy where players are moving around a lot from team to team, tournament to tournament, often moving from one tournament to another in the middle of one of those tournaments, at the same time that people are trying to create what you might call brand loyalty or tribalism. Actually, Vikram Banerjee, who is the ECB's head of business operations, was talking about trying to create this kind of tribalism. He likened it to football. That's what they want to get to. Now, that tribalism may come from many things. Your football fans, I don't know, it was a complete fluke that I became a Manchester United fan just because I, born in Manchester and went to watch them when I was 7. So tribalism comes from many things. It can just come from luck of the draw, but it can also come from an affinity with the players of a team. If a players have been with a team for a period of time, that's how you build loyalty and affinity as well. And that's going to be difficult to do if players come and go willy-nilly. That seems an obvious problem to me. The solutions seem less clear-cut.
Completely agree with all of that. And it's one thing when you asked me how's the 100 going, it's the first thing that came to mind, not just as a brand for the 100 and the Spectator and as a tournament, but just as a broadcaster. You will rock up, and it's easier to do a women's game because I think they've only had the one draft system, so that you turn up and you pretty much know who's playing for who. And there is we've just had Sophia Dunkley, and she moved across and is now at the Welsh Fire. So there is movement. But in the men's game at the start of this tournament, it has been a complete nightmare. I rocked up to Manchester knowing that, and done my prep, and Josh Little had played for Manchester last year. And this year he was there playing for the Welsh Fire again for one game. Chris Green playing for the Trent Rockets, did really well. Runs, wickets, catches, but was there for one game. Mohamed Amir, there for one game. And I think the sides that have done it best, you turn up the Oval, for example, men and women, you see that affinity. You see those players that have played for Surrey. So you're talking about the Curran brothers. You see a captain that's been there a couple of years now in Billings. You see, there is an affinity in both directions with where they're playing, and the fans rock up there. And I think they put it on brilliantly. It was sold out again. I think every game in the 100 at the Oval has been sold out. Brilliant atmosphere, even though it was a poor game. Brilliant atmosphere, family crowd, whatever. But I agree with you, that affinity. Now, what can you do about it? I think there's too much chopping and changing. I saw the Manchester side, and the Manchester side had, I don't know the exact number, 6, 7 changes from last year. And that Manchester original side had the Oval Invincibles in the final last year, 40 for 5, and were that much away from winning it. And I was thinking, why have they made so many changes to their squad? And there will be good reasons for it. Player availability. This year the MLC's going on. You've got international cricket going on. Whether you don't have a draft every year so that players stay with the side longer, but then next year, the Future Tours program, you lose half your players because they're playing somewhere. So it is a really difficult situation to be in. I don't have the answers to it, but what I do not like is rocking up and I don't blame players. If you're Amir and you're offered to play in the Blast, play in the 100, play in Canada, there's no problem with players.
That's at the heart of the question, isn't it? Because what's happening with the franchise tournaments is that the game is being determined by the market. And once the market determines the game, there will always be somebody with deeper pockets than you. And therefore there will always be that, that incentive to move, as it were. You mentioned Freddie there because you mentioned the Northern Superchargers. I mean, that first game against, was it the Rockets? They had a real nightmare with players coming and going and trying to get players in at the last minute. And we should mention Freddie. Good luck to him as he starts out his coaching journey. But did you notice Rocky, his boy, made his debut for Lancashire the other day, the youngest ever to play for the first team at Old
Do you know who he beat? You're a historian of the game. Who did he beat? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure.
I've got you on here.
but 16, I mean, absolutely fantastic. And he's a player. And Archie Vaughan made his...
run out backing up.
Oh, my God. He made his debut for Somerset and was run out backing up without facing on his debut, which is just about the worst way to go. So our best wishes to those two boys as they start their journey. Did you see in the Metro One Day Cup, by the way, Ben Kellaway of Glamorgan, the ambidextrous Ben Kellaway? Amazing.
I mean, how difficult is it to bowl, as you showed with your leg spin, with one arm, to rock up and bowl with your other arm as well?
I read up about it, and he said that he started off in lockdown, in COVID, and he started to want to bowl to, it must have been his brother or something, with his left arm in the back garden, realised he could do it, and now he took wickets against Surrey. It looks a bit more natural with his right arm. He's an off spinner by trade, but he bowls left arm as well, and the game changing rapidly, of course, the likes of Liam Livingstone being able to bowl off spin or leg spin. Who knows whether there'll be more ambidextrous bowlers in future. Well, the cricket world never stands still, Nas. While we've been recording this podcast, news has come through that Matthew Mott has been moved on, or stood down, I think is the precise wording in the press release, but halfway through what the term he would have expected to complete as England's white ball coach. There's going to be a change of direction. It's not particularly unexpected because news had been circulating for a while that this may be the case, but that confirmation has come through whilst we've been recording. So what do you reckon?
Well, I mean, first reaction is a bit of a shame, really. Not that it matters, but I've always found him a thoroughly engaging, decent, honest sort of guy. And this won't matter at all to punters and fans and supporters. His job is to win games of cricket and win World Cups. But if you meet him behind the scenes, he's a thoroughly decent human being. So, but you judge by results. His results started very well, almost on the back of continuing the Owen Morgan era. He took over Morgan and Bayliss, Butler and Mott, and they had that immediate success winning the T20 World Cup in Australia in 2022. But since then, it's gone completely in the other direction. The 50 over World Cup was a poor performance. It really was. They were so far off the mark with results and decision making in that tournament. And I guess it shows how far England white ball cricket's come, that you get to a World Cup semi-final, as they did in Guyana, and lose to India, and you lose your job on the back of that. We would have been hailed as heroes for getting to a World Cup semi-final. So it's a shame, but not unexpected. What do you think?
Yeah, I concur with that. The last two World Cups haven't been good, but he goes away as one of three coaches to have won a World Cup with England. So not completely disappointing 2 years, but the last two World Cups, you got the sense that things weren't quite working. I suppose there's a couple of things to pick up on that just before the jobs were given to McCullum and Mott, it was one person doing all, Chris Silverwood. I'm a big believer that is impossible now, that you have to split the roles. But I guess as we think to now who replaces Matthew Mott, do you think that they should still split the roles? Could Brendan McCullum, for example, take everything on? It seems to me that the schedules are almost impossible for that to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right thing to do. It's worked for other nations, as in India. Rahul Dravid did it very well, and Gautam Gambhir has taken over. I don't think McCullum or others would want to do it. I mean, just purely finances, we've touched about it with players, but also finances, they're quite happy doing a part and having some time to themselves, doing some IPL, maybe. Whether an England coach could do IPL and be an England coach, I do not know. The candidates for me, Andrew Flintoff has been spoken.
Just before you go on to the candidates, could I just come back on that? I mean, I can't see. I mean, one of the problems for Matthew Mott was that there was long periods where the team's not in operation, and we've said that you can't have a coach across both because it's too crowded. But once you split it, the white ball coach then spends long periods with the team not in action. Now, the IPL is obviously an international window in the IPL. So if you're looking to attract the best people or coaches who do have an involvement in the IPL, I can't see why an England coach wouldn't be able to do both, actually.
Apart from the finances, because they'll be paid so much for the IPL and it's such a long gig, they will say, right, I'll do that. And then use the rest as my time off. If you've been paid £2.50 for the IPL, then you want to go off and do so. And it's a short tournament. It's a long tournament. And they see the window as a little bit of a rest after that. So
nationality, does that matter? We've had Englishmen in charge of the team before, and we've had very good and successful overseas coaches that when a new job comes around, the call often goes out about, where are the English coaches? But to my mind, the nationality is irrelevant. You just want the best person.
Absolutely. I mean, we had that in the England football coach. People sort of saying, next one has to be English. Next one needs to be the best coach. And the best ones I've seen in recent times have been overseas. McCullum in charge now. Duncan Fletcher with myself and Michael Vaughan, Andy Flower. Sometimes you have that, you bring an exterior perspective to things. I know Duncan did that. He'd been outside English cricket and saw it from the outside, and you don't come in with any sort of internal baggage, as it were. But it can be an English coach. I'm not ruling out English coaches. I just want the best person to get us back winning World Cups and playing good cricket in white.
I mean, it is going to be an Englishman in charge temporarily, Marcus Trescotty, and what that is really a holding pattern that will allow them to do a proper recruitment process over the next few months. There are obviously some white ball games against Australia at the end of the summer, but then attention turns to the next ICC event, which is the Champions Trophy in that February, March, I think. And then you're moving on to the next World Cups, which is really where the focus of a coach is. That's how they're judged, really, not so much on bilateral series, but the ICC events. So candidates, I was actually had a brief look at the the list that the bookies were putting out.
Did you see Charles Leclerc was it?
I know. Oh my word.
We can rule him out.
I noticed Kumar was up near the top of the list, has worked with Joss, of course, at Rajasthan Royals. Owen Morgan, although he seemed to rule himself out the other day on commentary, but no doubt his name will be floated around. The two Australians that are held in high regard, Mike Hussey, did work with England when they won the T20 World Cup in Australia a couple of years ago. Simon Katic, who's coaching the Manchester Originals. Of Englishmen, I mean, Jonathan Trott's had a fantastic run with Afghanistan, has just taken a new position in South Africa. People speak very highly of James Foster, your old colleague and teammate at Essex. And for me, the outstanding candidate or name would be Andy Flower.
Yeah, you've thrown me. I've not mentioned Andrew Flintoff there. I think is the bookie's favourite. I haven't looked at the latest odds. I may come slightly early for Andrew. You'd argue what is on his CV for the job, but I'm not sure the present regime worry too much about CVs. They just do what they feel is the best for the future. So, and obviously his close links with Rob Key, and he knows the dressing room. He's been in and around the England dressing room and Lions camps, etc. Simon Katic is someone that when he came back, Rob Key, when he was a broadcaster, one of his last gigs was in Pakistan, covering the Pakistan-Australia series. And he came back speaking very highly of Simon Katic as a person, as a knowledge of the game. And I think he would have been on his list for the job first time round. Mike Hussey, I've always thought, has a fabulous cricket brain. I don't know at the moment, Af, who out of all of those, if you're asking me if Andy Flower was available and wanted to do it, I would go. Andy Flower's with Duncan Fletcher, probably one of the great cricket brains and one of the great men of cricket, to be honest. So if you're asking me who my personal favourite would be Andy Flower. But do you think that's a backward step? We discussed it earlier about England going backward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting one. Broad brush rule of life is not to retrace your steps usually, but I think it's a very different time, actually. Andy was in charge of both Test and white ball teams when he was in charge, and has since gone on to have terrific success in franchise cricket. So it's a different job now. It's half the job from what it was before, and it's the kind of job where it's almost like a franchise, because the players come in for a short period and then disappear away. So he's got an outstanding CV, no question about that.
He's got his franchise CV.
Well, exactly. Multan, Sultans, St. Lucia, Trent Rockets. Yeah. Anyway, maybe this is
one more question. Sorry. Do you think the coach-captain relationship's important? Because like when Morgan was in charge, So Trevor Bayliss, that sort of confidence and expertise of Morgs, Trevor Bayliss could just take a backward step a little bit and be a facilitator. With Joss, do you feel you need someone a little bit more like I'm in charge, a little bit, like Andy Flower?
It's always hard, isn't it, when you're asked to comment around the style of a captain, because we see it from a distance. We're not in the dressing room. But everything you sense and hear a little bit is that, yes, that's the case. That Matthew Mott was appointed when Owen Morgan was still in charge, and almost you felt, that the coach therefore was being appointed just to keep a good thing going. Whereas the requirements now might be very different under a new captain, a different style of captain. It may be that the coach needs to take a more hands-on role or a more forward role. So that may be the case. I mean, one thing's for sure, the dynamic is really important. So that to my detriment when I was captain with, say, for example, somebody like Ray Illingworth, who didn't really see eye to eye with. I got on fine with him, but we didn't see eye to eye on many things. And then saw it very strongly with you and Duncan, who you didn't know at the start, but developed a very good rapport with. Duncan and Michael Vaughan. Later, Andy Flower and Andrew Strauss. I think the strongest periods have been when captain and coach have been very tight and coordinated.
And hence you should ask Joss. Really, Joss would know Simon Katich from Manchester Originals. He'll know Kumar from Rajasthan Royals. All these candidates will be well known to him. If I'm presuming Joss is going to carry on in the role, the conversations will be happening as we speak about how to move the white ball side forward.
Yeah, I mean, the coach is always more vulnerable than the captain, isn't it? Because you can get coaches from anywhere, but world-class white ball players are rare breeds. So it always felt to me at the end of the World Cup that if there was going to be a change, it was always likely to be coach rather than captain. And that is how it's proved to be. Anyway, maybe we can move along this topic in more depth and detail next time. But we've been banging on for long enough, and I'll see you Friday at the Oval, and we'll catch up next week on the pod.
Cheers.